Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome back to the Mixing in a Home Music Studio course. In this video, we're going to talk about vocal tuning. So firstly, if you are new to my channel, new to my videos, and you like what you see, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So vocal tuning, this is something that is very common these days. Not so much in the past, but now with the technology we have and the ability to not only create vocal tuning that is very transparent, very accurate and not necessarily noticeable, but we can also use it to create very much auto-tune effects and things like that as well. So we can go from one extreme to, just subtle, making you sound a lot better as a singer when you've, missed a few notes here and there or whatever you've done, but actually still sounds very accurate and very clean. Now, some artists don't like tuning done, if there's somebody that thinks that they can sing very well or they can sing very well. Other artists rely heavily on tuning. Now, I'm not going to judge either way. As long as you get the end results that you want at the end, so be it. That's all good for you. Obviously, if you're not a very good singer and you're relying on that, you may have some problems if you ever get asked to do this stuff live. But that is all, what you want to do and how you want to do it. There are certain limitations, okay? This software does not perform miracles, so, you can't expect to get a clean tuned vocal if you really, really can't sing, okay? So, most vocalists still need to do a bit of work. When it comes to effects, obviously auto-tune is a really famous effect and you can replicate that in other software. It doesn't have to be an auto-tune, but it's sort of known as the auto-tune effect. So you can do that, that's an artistic approach there, probably as a result of somebody trying to tune some badly sung vocals and stumbled across it one day and thought, oh, that sounds good. I'm not sure how it came about, but let's just guess that probably could be what it was. So, you can do all of those techniques as well. Now, I have an entire course on vocal tuning that you can check out. It's an older course, granted. So, things could be a little bit, maybe the quality is not as good as some of the courses now, that sort of stuff. I'll let you be the judge of that, but do check it out because I do cover a lot of the plugins or the most popular plugins and some of the techniques and things you can do and how you can use those. So do check that out. But we will run through a little bit of an example now. I'll show you some of the common plugins and give you a brief demonstration of it in Cubase. But as I said, I do have an entire course on it, so go and check that out if you want to go into more depth in it. And hopefully that will give you, provide you all the answers you need and the guidance you need. But go and check it out, and we'll check out a couple of examples now. So we've got a song here from a client of mine, Joe Massatano, that I'm going to demonstrate this on. So I thank him for that. It can be a little bit awkward for vocalists to show that sort of material and to allow them to let me play raw material to people and then show tuning and stuff like that. So it's very much appreciated that I get the chance to do this. With Very Audio, basically we just have a vocal track here, and the way to get in there is we just double click on it and we open up the sample editor here. So you'll see here, this is the waveforms of the audio, and the first thing we need to do is, here's our Very Audio here. So if we don't have that open, we click on it to open Very Audio, and then all we need to do is just click on this little arrow here against pitch and warp, and it will go and analyze the audio. Now, depending on how big your audio file is or how small it is, that could take a long time or a little time, but it's done. And you'll see we've got all of these little red dots everywhere now and blocks. So if we actually zoom in a bit and say get to where our cursor is, now you can start to see some waveform information here. So each one of these little blocks is what it has determined to be an independent note. And you can see the line in there is fluctuations in that note. And you get a lot of little things like this here where it's sliding up. That's all natural parts of the normal vocal. We do not sing in flat lines. Our voice pitches and varies and all that sort of stuff. And same here, we hold a note, it can vary and pitch. Where we get a little bit of waviness, that's probably a little bit of vibrato there. Where we start to get big wavy, it could be that it's misdetected and it could be two separate notes, or it could just be that we weren't quite accurate with our note there and we sort of pitched a little bit up and down while trying to hold a note. This tool here is not really an automatic tool, okay? So if you think of something like auto-tune where you place the plugin on and it's automatically tuning as the vocal is playing or being sung in, this is not like that. So this tool is sort of done after the fact. So we've got all our notes here, we've got them all detected. Now we can do a few things here. We can highlight certain parts, which is a very good way to do it. So we can be playing the song, listening to it, and then picking some notes. For instance, if we just play this for a little bit.
So baby, come over here and tell me what's on your mind. Life can be crazy, it's so hard to define. So don't keep me waiting, don't let me be misunderstood. Don't keep me waiting.
So we might say here, that note there, I didn't like that note, it wasn't quite in. We can manually move it to find a note that's suitable.
Don't keep me waiting.
Now that's no good.
Don't keep me waiting. Don't keep me waiting.
And it's automatically locking to where we're placing it, but we can hold down the shift key while I move it and I can move it freely. If I'm not holding the shift key and I just move it, it takes it in note values. But you'll notice there it's not quite on center. So it's staying at the pitch that it was when it was discovered, right? So as it analyzed it, it found that it was not 100% on pitch. It was slightly off. But when we move it based on that slightly off pitch as well, but just into different notes. But if I hold the shift key on my keyboard and do it, I can manually move this to exactly where I want it. But the other feature we can do is, okay, let's say we don't really know, we want to do something and we want to quantize it to the pitch. We want to get it on pitch. So we can highlight that note and then come across here to the quantize and we can drag this. And as we drag it, you'll see the note moving. So that, if we go fully across, means that it's 100% quantized to the note, but we may not want to be that perfect. We may just want to do a little bit or a fair bit, but not quite 100%. So if we go 100%, we end up with this.
Don't keep me waiting. Don't let me.
Which sounds good, but the last note there is still not good either. So we could go again 100%.
Don't keep me waiting. Don't let me. Don't keep me waiting. Don't let me.
So you'll notice there when I went to 100% quantized on this note here, it actually brought it down. But when it's bringing it down, if you look across here on the notes, we're hitting a C sharp. And in that case, this case here, it may not be in key. So when I moved it up to a D, it sounded a lot better.
Don't keep me waiting.
So we could just drop the quantize down if we wanted. We could take it all the way back off.
Don't keep me waiting.
We could bring it up a little bit.
Don't keep me waiting.
So you want to play with the setting here to get the best possible sound. You want it to sound natural. You don't want it to sound like it's been tuned, and 100% may make it perfect pitch, but may start to introduce some artifacts and might not sound so natural. So you may want to bring it down a little bit because you know that the note was never going to be 100% on pitch anyway. So it might sound a bit more natural to go that stage. So we can do that throughout the song on selected notes or anything like that, which is probably the best way to do it because you are trying to keep as much of the vocal natural without being tuned at all. But the other way to do it is to actually select all of the notes. So I'm just pressing Control A on my keyboard, and now I've selected all of the notes. And when I've done that, I can now quantize every single note on the entire vocal track to whatever level I want. So if you just want to do a little bit of tuning across the board, just to tuck them in a little bit, get them closer to the notes, then you can select everything, do a little bit, and then go through and manually edit all the ones as much as possible. Or you could go 100% if that's what you're aiming for and you find that to be natural. So the most common thing that happens when you do quantizing like that to pitch and tuning is that if the person's been off note enough, so let's say they're going, this note here, they were going for a D, but they sort of hit about here. When you quantize, there's a chance that it's either going to quantize up or quantize down based on where it goes. So you might find that it actually puts it to the wrong note. So it's a good idea to actually listen through the song a few times because you may need to adjust these notes based on that because it doesn't know what note you should have been hitting. It just knows that you want to tune it to the closest note unless you set a key, okay? But in this one here, we don't have that ability. We just manually go for what we're doing. Now, the other thing that can happen here is that, say in the case of this note here, you might see that there's this big dip here, or sorry, a big bump here. Now, what that could be is that could be actually a second note, and the software hasn't detected that. Now, that can cause you problems because when you go to tune it or quantize it to pitch, because it thinks it's one note, it puts it in the one spot. Whereas this one here, this section here might be best at this note, but this section here might be best at the next note up. So if you find any of those, what you can do is you can go to the segment, click on the segments there, and then when you come across here, you can actually get a little pair of scissors, come up there, and we can clip it. Then when we clip it, we then have the ability to quantize those notes again, so we can bring them in. And again, it has put it to the same note. So if we go back to our pitch and warp, we can now drag this note up separately and this one down here. So that's definitely something that happens quite a lot because even though the software is very powerful, sometimes it does struggle to detect different notes, especially if you do not clearly define those different notes in your vocal passage, or if you are a little bit pitchy, it can't always detect those notes cleanly. So there will be times where you'll need to come in and manually clip some of these notes in half or in sections to be able to define those notes a bit better. Now, you'll also notice that in Very Audio, we have this setting here called Straighten Pitch. Now, what that is useful for is that sometimes you might find that you've got a vocalist that is not very confident, they're very pitchy. And when I say pitchy, like they're hitting the note, but the sustain of the note fluctuates too much and makes it sound like it's going in and out of a tune while holding that note. So that can be very handy to fix that up a little bit. So say we pick this note here, let's say we notice this fluctuation is just way too much. It's starting to sound like it's going in and out of tune. We can then again control this dial here, and you'll see as I'm doing that, it's flattening out that waveform. So we start to get everything more in pitch. And if we go fully, we end up with a flat line. Now, you won't want a flat line unless you're going for a weird effect, which is what I'll talk about in future videos. But right now, you're just going to want to adjust this to reduce that fluctuation enough where it sounds natural, but it also sounds like it's not going out of tune. So if we just listen to that little part. So that's really a short bit there. Let's see if we can find a longer note. So if we look at this note here, if you were to say that was a little bit out of key going in and out there, you can flatten that out a bit like that. And suddenly you've made that note make sure that it still sounds fairly natural, but it's also staying on the note closer. You want a little bit of variance in the vocal there. You don't want a flat line, but you don't want it peaking too much in and out of this note so that it starts to sound out of tune. So again, you can do that on individual notes, or you could do it across the board by Control-A-ing, select the whole lot, and just do a little bit of straightening across the lot. It all depends on the vocalist, what the quality of the vocal is, and what you prefer to do in this regard. My preference is always only to edit or tune what you really need to tune, not just to assume to tune everything. I actually like to listen and make a call on what I think needs to be tuned. So the trick with Melodyne is that there's obviously a few versions, so there's some more advanced ones. I don't have the advanced version, and I don't even have a very new version. I am running version 2.12, which is quite old. They're on version 4 now, and it's the Melodyne editor that I own. So there's probably a lot of advanced features and other and updated looks and feels and everything else based on new plugins, but the concepts still apply, and what I'm showing here will be translatable across the other Melodyne plugins. So the trick with Melodyne is because it's not embedded into the software of Cubase or any other DAW, it is basically a third-party plugin. We need to transfer the audio from our DAW into this plugin, and then it stores that audio in its own little location, and that's what it works on. Because it works on that, what it does is once you've loaded this plugin and you've put some audio into it, it then ignores the audio that's actually on the track and replaces it what is in its own software. So we can do a number of things when we transfer. We can either transfer parts individually, and that can be across the entire song. So you could do a little bit here, a little bit further down the song. Anything that you do not transfer in the middle will play live off the track and not in the plugin. So only what you've transferred to the plugin, the sections, will be played in the plugin. Anything that hasn't been transferred into the plugin will play live from the track. So you just need to keep that in mind. You can obviously load the entire vocal track into the plugin, which can be quite useful if you just want to be able to see everything in this plugin and be able to edit everything in this plugin. But you might only want to target one specific part, and if that's the case, just load that one part into the plugin, don't bother with the rest. Now, because it's playing the audio from the plugin and not from the track, the best place to put this plugin is always first in your insert channels. Because if you place it afterwards, what it's doing is it will be seeing the processed audio. And what that also means is that if you have the plugin down here, it's playing the audio from this plugin here. So any changes you make to these plugins here that are before it will do absolutely nothing, because it will only be what has been transferred into this plugin that will do it. So you always need to put this plugin first in the chain, because it will play its audio. Then you want to go through your rest of your processing plugins here so that you can make changes on these without having to transfer the audio back into Melodyne every time. So this way Melodyne's getting the raw audio straight into it, and then it's playing from there. Okay, so the way to get the audio in is basically we need to load the plugin, turn it on, we click transfer, and then we press play on our track.
So if you want the world to smile with you, then you gotta let it go. Otherwise it's gonna get you. It'll kill you nice and slow.
And then as soon as we stop it, it analyzes it and it draws the waveform here. So you'll see here, I only loaded this section here from bar 20. And it's left the rest blank. And you can see all the notes that it's drawn in here. We can zoom in vertically, we can zoom in horizontally. And we're basically looking at a very similar look to what we had before in Very Audio. Now again, same as Very Audio, Melodyne is an offline plugin. It does not automatically quantize or pitch correct vocals as they're being played or as they're being sung. You basically load the track that's already been recorded into this plugin, and then you can adjust. So same as we did with Very Audio, we can grab notes, but you'll notice in this regard here, it automatically plays the note as we click on it, but we can move it around. Now again, in the case of this plugin, where it is tuned, so if it's slightly off note, we move it. It automatically moves it to the same off-tuned position, but just up another note. In this regard here, if we hold the if we hold the Alt key down while I do it, I can then go very manual and find the spot there. You'll also notice up here, it's telling us the note. It's also telling us how off it is. So we can manually put it right center of the note, or detune it, or tune it up. Now what we can also do is, again, we could select all the audio, or we could select a section, and we can actually go over here to this button that says Quantize Pitch. And if we go to this Quantize Pitch here, we then have this ruler here that we can go 100% to center it to pitch, or vary it. Pretty much exactly the same as we were doing in Very Audio. So we could go all the way. And we also have this pitch drift, which again is a bit like the straightener. It's not quite straightening it, it's just trying to get the notes back online so they don't vary too much. So you'll see as I pull it full, as opposed to Very Audio, which made a flat line, this does not make a flat line, but it does try to flatten out. So it's more turning the angle up. So where these are lower and that's higher, it's bringing them up to be more center. Now, it's also suggested a key here of D major. So you could even click to snap it to D major. And then because we've got our quantize here, it's snapping the notes to that key. So if we unclick it, we get this. So let's just have a listen to that.
So if you want the world to smile with you, then you gotta let it go.
But if we open this up here and let's go snap to D major now.
So if you want the world to smile with you, then you gotta let it go.
So it's attempting to work out the key and adjust to suit.
So if you want the world to smile with you, then you gotta let it.
So here's something to keep in mind. So here's our Melodyne plugin sitting here. Now, let's just say I'm sitting here and I want to edit this vocal. I don't like this part. There's something wrong with it. I want to chop that out. So I do this.
So if you want the world to smile.
You'll notice there that I can take all of that audio out.
So if you want the world to smile with you, then.
And it doesn't change because it's playing what's in the plugin and it hasn't been removed from the plugin. So to remove it from the plugin, you either need to delete these notes from the plugin,
So
or you need to transfer that section back in to blank it out. So now we'll have a blank. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind, because that was a trick when I used to use Melodyne all the time, that I would start editing and doing fades on a vocal track to find that it was not doing anything, and then realize the reason is because Melodyne was the one that was playing the audio files. So if you have cleanup tasks to do on your vocal track and getting rid of noise and bad bits, etc., I suggest you do that first on the raw track before you load it into Melodyne to do the tuning. Because once you load it into Melodyne, that's what it's going to play. It's going to include all those noisy bits. Whatever in there that you don't like is in there. You either need to edit in Melodyne or reload it into Melodyne. And if you reload it by doing the transfer again, then you need to start from scratch with your tuning, because it's not going to remember your tuning. So keep that in mind. That's one disadvantage to using the plugins for this. Other than that, Melodyne is a great tool. It works fantastic. It's very easy to use, as you can see. It is very good quality. It's like the best out there that you can get for quality wise. So definitely a great tool, and this one will be extremely subtle and will have the least amount of noticeable tuning errors than any of the other plugins or inbuilt software there is. So there you go. That is vocal tuning and how I may do it in a mix. So let me know what you think of it. Is it something that you use actively? Do you use it a lot? Do you not like it? That sort of stuff. What's your favorite plugin to do it? Let me know. I'd love to hear opinions on that. If you do have any questions or follow-up, things that you need to understand further or I didn't explain properly, please do put it in the comments. I read all the comments and I answer as many of the comments as much as I can, as quickly as I can. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.